summer, you
about a week. Yeah, we met my wife's my in-laws out there. They live in Indiana.
Yeah, usually go with my daughter. Usually go with my daughter and
and then you have a pool where all these networks can come to get the one thing. Yeah, it is a little bit of what I'm trying to build. The guy that we've been living with just moved out. He started two multi-billion corporations. He owns like 60 branches for, or excuse me, for the cloud. And then he has largest data storage at one point, and he sold that to IBM. He's working on his third company right now. All the chokeholds that are on technology is also amazing. But I'm really excited to see what he's doing.
I would like this CDC
What's still involved with it, I just don't know the center. It's this beautiful little track site. It's got like a 4-story viewing platform where you can see all of Boston. But it's living in this dark bar. 3 a.m. You want to talk about
Well, the difference is that people party.
Yeah.
So we
It's like for parties is more like that.
in the South First.
Yeah, he's like non-stop. My friends in Colombia, they go for 2 days.
I don't know how big it is.
Yeah,
I guess it's like
I was you guys all have been that first. I was working for a company in New York, and they had an office here, and I had an opportunity to work here. And I'm like, it's cold here. I mean, all my family lives up there, but it's like, it's cold here, and it's super expensive. And my wife was talking about having kids. And I'm like, I used to come here sometimes. It's like awesome.
oh, I'm set up.
Great.
I didn't try the sites out there. Out of that
I like
place.
this style of life.
Hey, so everyone, welcome. If you can hear me, say yeah. It's almost 7 o'clock, so I'll just get started sooner because I didn't put that there would be networking in the beginning. But my name is Cam Knight, and I'm a coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books in the area of mental performance, such as memory, concentration, and productivity. And so this workshop is called Resolution Uplift, and I want to go deep into the mind and talk about how our mind holds us back, why it does, how it manifests, and what we can do to move forward. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping rules. First and foremost, let's turn off our cellular phones because it does disrupt me and it will break my flow. It'll be best totally off, but silent if that's possible. Hopefully I can keep you engaged enough so you don't need it. Two, I'm going to cover a lot of topics, and I have a very strict format for it, and so I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. And I've left a lot of time for questions in the end, the Q&A session. If you do have questions, please write it down, and I promise I will get to as many questions as possible. So I think that should cover it. You guys all have handouts, correct? Okay. So as I mentioned, my name is Cam Knight, and I'm a coach, writer, and author. And I have written, over the last 10 years, I've written and published 10 books. And most recently, I wrote, narrated, and produced an online course called Double Your Productivity in 30 Days. So I'm a mind guy. I help you go from where you are to where you want to be. One of the things I learned early on is that wanting does not equate to having. Just because you want something doesn't mean you'll be able to take steps to get it. And I wonder why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't get myself to do it. And if you talk to many personal development experts, they'll say that you lack motivation, which is why their programs pump you with so much motivation, it feels like you're going to explode. Unfortunately, motivation does not last over the long haul. That's because motivation and inspiration are feelings, and feelings are very fleeting. They leave as quickly as they arise. So relying on motivation alone will not get you far. Another area where personal development experts get it wrong is that they focus too much on techniques. They give you an array of tips, solutions, systems, processes, and steps. The focus is all on solutions. They tell you to do this, like that, in this way, and through that. Unfortunately, solutions aren't the be-all and end-all either. I was at a personal development conference earlier this year by one of the top personal development experts in the world, and he said less than 2% of his followers will actually apply his advice. And most recently, I heard a statistic that less than 5% of people who buy self-help books actually read them. The solution is not in the solutions. The solution is an understanding that the mind is built to keep you from moving forward. That's right, the mind is designed to keep you from growing and making progress. You see, anytime that a decision, option, or a course of action stands before you, that decision is evaluated by the mind using a whole host of criteria. And if that course of action is not in line with the criteria, the mind will prevent action. It doesn't matter how much motivation you have, or how simple the solution is, or even how much benefit you can derive. If the mind doesn't approve the decision, you can't act, period. So think about standing before a panel of judges or a board of directors. Every decision that comes up must go through them. If even one of the members is against the idea, that idea will not pass. I can pump you with all the motivation and solutions in the world, but none of that will matter. What matters is understanding why the mind holds you back, how it does, and what you can do to move past it. Only then is progress possible. So if you've been struggling to make progress in your life, this may be the reason why. So this presentation is going to be broken into 3 sections. First, I'm going to discuss why the mind holds you back. Then I'll go into how that manifests. Because if the mind's holding you back, it's not going to tell you that it is, or to give you the reason. You have to look for the signs, and I'll talk about that in the second part. And then finally, I'll talk about what you can do to move past some of these hurdles. So the first part of the presentation. As I mentioned, we humans are made up of mechanisms and processes that are designed to hold us back. And one of the more common mechanisms is habit. So habits are designed to keep us in a routine or pattern of behavior. In their efforts, they will do everything that they can to make sure you stick to that routine or pattern of behavior. If they didn't, they wouldn't be very good at what they did, now would they? Even if something is painful or downright harmful to your health, habits will still keep you in it. That's what they're designed to do. So if you set a goal that goes against your habits, then it'll be hard to take action on it. So this is a common mechanism that we all kind of know about. Something else that's not so common is identity. Identity is an abstract concept that's difficult to describe, but more or less, it's characteristics that define you. They usually start with the words I am. So I am a photographer, I am a fighter, I am studious, I am generous, I'm stylish, I'm American, Brazilian, German, Kenyan, Indian, Australian, I am cool, I am independent. We humans are built to operate within the confines of the identity that we have formed or accepted. So what that means is our mind will make it easier to do certain things if it's in line with our identity. And it'll make it harder to do things that go against our identity. So it's not the difficulty of the task that makes it difficult, but if it goes against our identity. And I'll give you a couple examples. Going back to our teenage years, being cool was really important because it meant that more kids liked us, more parties we were invited to, and more opportunities for dates. It also meant that less harassment and bullying from other kids. So for a lot of kids, it was really important to identify with being cool. And those who did, their mind veered their attention towards things that were seen as cool, like dressing in the latest fashion, talking to certain types of people, or participating in certain activities. Now what's interesting is, if something was labeled uncool, their mind wouldn't allow them to do it. If studying, debate, or chess was labeled uncool, their mind would make them avoid it like it was a plague. They couldn't do it even if they tried. So this explains why certain kids have difficulty performing well in school. It's not because it's difficult, but it goes against their identity, which is what makes it difficult. Another example relates to an experiment done within the realm of Robert Cialdini's techniques of persuasion. And this is really fascinating. So two groups of solicitors were asked to go door to door asking for donation for cancer research. The first group went to people's homes and asked for donations outright. The second group, they didn't ask outright. They first went door to door asking people if they would wear a pin to support cancer research. Most people said, sure, because it wasn't a big commitment, only to wear a pin. Then they went back to the people who agreed to wear a pin and asked them to donate money. Considerably more people who agreed to wear a pin donated than the control group that wasn't asked to wear a pin. And it wasn't like 10, 20, or 30% more, but hundreds of percent more. Why? Because the pin, in addition to creating a commitment, changed their identity to somebody who donates, somebody who supports cancer research. So when they asked for a donation, their mind goes, well, I'm a supporter of cancer research, so of course I'm going to donate. The action was natural. Just by changing somebody's identity, they were able to influence their actions. And this is a big concept in marketing. Marketers are playing with our identity all the time to make us do all sorts of things. They will create an identity that's desirable and say, if you want to be like that, buy this product. Or they'll create an identity that isn't desirable and say, if you don't want to be like that, buy this product. Are you a Mac or are you a PC? If you're a Mac, you couldn't buy a PC even if you tried. If you're a PC, Mac people likely know you to the point you would never touch a Mac just so you're not associated with that identity. Now what's interesting is it's just computer, just hardware. But because our identities are tied to it, it affects our behaviors and actions in all sorts of weird ways. So this is one of the reasons the mind holds us back. Another not so common reason deals with authority issues. Authority issues relate to our unconscious attitudes towards authority figures such as parents, teachers, principals, bosses, police officers, priests, security guards, and even personal development coaches like myself. I will extend that I'll extend that definition to anybody that tells you or makes you feel obligated to do something. Were your parents on your case about cleaning up when you were young? Were teachers always harping about studying? Well, now as an adult, you likely live a messy life or resist studying more simply for that reason. I have a friend whose parents used to nag and pester him about cleaning his room. They nagged and pestered him so much, he became spiteful towards them and carried that spite for decades. As an adult, he lived a messy life because just out of spite. He had no idea until he saw a therapist that his messy lifestyle as a fully grown adult was triggered by his parents from over 20 years ago. The resistance was unconscious. He didn't know why he couldn't stay clean and organized no matter how hard he tried. What's more is that we can hold authority issues for a long time. People can go decades to their entire life resisting an authority and consequently not do anything that they have said or any advice that they have given, no matter how long ago they said or gave it. We can hold resentment to our graves. What that means is, to this day, in this very moment, you may unconsciously be holding resentment from years ago towards brothers, sisters, friends, teachers, parents, bosses, colleagues, co-workers, and aren't able to do certain things only because they suggested it, wanted it, or forced it upon you. So you may not have done well in school simply because of all the teachers telling you to study. You may be resistant to being on time because someone at some point in your life was on your case about being timely. You may not be reaching for higher success only because an overbearing father or mother wanted it so badly for you. Or you may be resisting change because a boy or girlfriend forced it upon you, even though that change could be good and beneficial. Or the opposite may be happening. You may have been told not to watch so much TV when you were young, and now you binge watch like it's going out of style. You may think it's because you enjoy it, but there might be some unconscious authority issues at play. Or you may still smoke, drink, and get high to give the big F you to all the people who told you that it wasn't good for you, and so you can show that, hey, nothing bad happened. What's interesting about our authority issues is that it's unconscious. We don't consciously decide them. The unconscious would make the decision, and we're just playing it out. So these are some of the reasons how and why the mind will hold you back. There are more reasons, but this kind of gives you a good idea of why that happens. So if you've ever been angry or upset at somebody for not doing or being able to do what you thought was simple and easy, now you know why it might have been hard for them. Or if someone was angry or upset at you for the same reasons, no, it wasn't because you were lazy, inept, or that something was wrong with you. You had these mechanisms and processes holding you back. And a lot of it is unconscious, so we're not even aware of it, and a lot of it's not being talked about, so we just assume that it's just us. So this covers the first section of our presentation, why the mind holds us back, why it blocks us. So I covered three main reasons. One is habit, the other is identity, and the third is authority issues. There's a lot more, but I don't have all that time to cover, so I covered three of them. Now I'm going to move to the second section of how all of this manifests. Because like I said, if the mind is holding you back, it's not going to tell you that it's holding you back or give you the reason why. Inaction manifests other ways. So if habits are the culprit, the mind isn't going to be like, this thing that you're trying to do goes against your habit, so we can't do it. Or if identity is the issue, your mind isn't going to be like, well, this goal that you set it goes against our identity. So we're just gonna sit here and do nothing. Nope, that's not what happens. Inaction manifests other ways. And it's really important that you understand the manipulative tricks that the mind uses so you're not manipulated by them. So what are the manipulative tricks? Well, one of the more common ones is that you'll get busy. One of the more common ones is that you'll get busy. Your schedule will fill up with so many tasks and activities that you won't have time to work on that goal. And the busyness won't be random, it'll be deliberate. It may seem like that you just naturally have more on your plate or that you have a lot to do, but the reality is the mind is finding ways to keep you preoccupied. So what wasn't a big concern or a big deal, all of a sudden becomes top priority. You have this insatiable urge to clean the car, organize a closet, empty out the garage, or call your aunt from 2 years ago, even though you have no interest or desire to talk to her. And you won't be able to do or focus on anything else until this priority is handled. And yeah, you won't be able to do or focus on anything until the priority is handled. And yeah, and the reason is because of these processes at play. As long as your mind can keep you preoccupied, then it can keep you from moving forward on your specific goal or task. So this is one of the more common ways inaction manifests. Inaction, one of the not so common ways is that you'll forget. As humans, we forget as much as 80% of what we hear, see, and learn within a few hours of hearing, seeing, and learning it. Now, that's not within a few months or weeks or even a few days, but within a few hours. The thing is, the human mind is designed to make us forget. That's right, the human mind is designed to make us forget things. You might be thinking, how could that be? Why would my mind make me forget? Or intentionally make me forget? Well, there are advantages to forgetting. For one, as humans, we come across so much information on a day-to-day basis that majority of it is not useful for the long term. It's useful only for the moment. So it's important to have mechanisms in place that discard or forget what's not useful. Otherwise, your brain will be overloaded with useful information and it'll be difficult to sift through what is important. Another reason we forget is that some events and experiences are too painful to remember. Thinking about them create overwhelming anxiety and stress. So as a defense mechanism, the brain will block certain memories so you can focus on what's important in the moment. A more important reason we forget is what we're talking about in this presentation, is that as humans, we have all these mechanisms and processes, and for them to do what they're designed to do, they will make us forget. I had talked about habits and how habits are designed to keep us in a specific routine or pattern of behavior. Well, habits have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves to make sure that we stick to that routine or pattern of behavior. And one of those tricks is that they'll make us forget anything that goes against what we've been habitually ingrained to do. So for example, you read a great book and learn all these great ideas about how to organize your life. The problem is being organized goes against your habits of being messy. That habit of being messy is not going to give up easy. It's going to make sure that you forget all those great ideas so you never even think about putting them into place. And not only will you forget the ideas, but you'll forget everything surrounding it. So if you set a goal to make more money and you attend workshops and seminars to learn how to do that, you'll start forgetting what you learned. And all goals require us to take steps. So to set meetings, make appointments, and follow a course of action. And you'll start to forget those steps as well. You'll forget the meetings, you'll forget the appointments, and you'll forget the course of action. Often you'll even forget the goal and forget that you even set one in the first place. In fact, majority of you will forget most of this presentation shortly after you leave. And And I'm not saying this to be cynical, pessimistic, or to show that I don't have confidence in your ability to remember. But this is the way the mind works. This is how it's built. It's not a matter of if, but when. And what's worse is that you'll have a feeling that you remember it, but when you actually go to apply the information, it won't come up, or it won't come up in as much detail as you learned it here. And this is a reason why I went through the trouble of creating this handout. So you do remember at least a little bit of it, and if you're taking notes, much more. So this is one of the ways that our mind, one of the ways the mind creates an action. Another way is that you will spend all your time preparing. So instead of spending all your time taking action, you'll spend all of your time preparing to take action. So you'll go into painstaking detail, researching what to do, how to do it, the best way to do it, and in the best moment. To illustrate, I'll share a story of an ex-coworker of mine, Loretta. One summer, she set a goal to lose weight, get healthy, and become fit. Before getting started, she wanted to make sure that she was prepared. And boy, did she prepare. She searched for the perfect gym that was both close to her house and had all the amenities that she wanted. She went out and bought the best clothes so she could stay cool and move easily, and above all, look good. She researched all the exercises and routines and the proper form and execution. She even went out and learned the proper diet and nutrition. Before doing a single workout, she had gained enough knowledge to essentially be a personal trainer. And before doing a single workout, summer was over. She spent all her time preparing to work out, but not actually working out. Suffice to say, she didn't achieve her goal of losing weight. And what's more is, when next summer rolled around, she had already forgotten everything that she had learned. Like Loretta, when you have a goal, when you face a goal that goes against your inner mechanisms, like habits, identity, and authority issues, your mind will focus all your attention on preparing. You'll go out and buy the perfect notebook, calendar, or whatever supplies you think you need to get the job done. And you might even spend all your time researching for the perfect supplies and materials, and even tell yourself, you know what, I should wait until I have enough money to be able to afford this. Or you might go out and learn all the ins and outs of what to do and how to do it. You will read loads of books, watch tons of videos, attend all sorts of workshops and seminars, and talk to all sorts of people. You might even take diligent notes and rewrite those notes and arrange and rearrange them over and over. Like Loretta, you might get stuck perpetually preparing and planning. And when it's time to take action and you don't feel ready, guess what you'll do? Prepare and plan some more. So this is another way inaction manifests. This is a form of inaction called creative avoidance, where you find creative ways to avoid doing something. The dangers of preparing is that it gives you the dangers of preparing, and the reason it works so well is that it gives you the illusion of progress. Because you're actually working on the goal, you think you're making progress. My ex-coworker Loretta had no idea that she was in avoidance mode. She actually thought she was making progress. But the fact that she didn't do what actually mattered, which was taking action, her mind convinced her that she was making enough progress without actually making any progress. So if you get into a heightened sense of preparation, be careful of that. Because preparing too much is a sign that the mind is trying to avoid you from doing something and moving forward. On the surface, it doesn't seem like it's avoidance behavior, but it is. Preparation is only moving forward once you get past that step. So as I mentioned, so these are some of the ways our inaction manifests, how our mind keeps us from moving forward. So one is that we'll get busy, the other is we'll forget, and the third is preparation. So these are some of the manipulative tricks the mind uses. On the surface, they don't seem like tricks, which is why they work so well and why we so easily fall for them. But it's really important to understand when you are being tricked so that you can move past it. Because it's kind of like when somebody is nice to you only because they want something. When you don't realize that they're being nice because they want something, you'll gladly return the favor. But once you start to realize they're only doing it to get something in return, you're much more reluctant to return the favor. So we need to be as careful with our goals and to make sure our mind isn't manipulating us. So now I've covered the two sections. One, why the mind holds us back, how the inaction manifests, and now I'm going to discuss the what part of it and what you can do to move forward in the new year. The most important advice I can give people is self-talk. Have you guys heard of self-talk? Yeah? So more or less, self-talk are statements that you say or repeat to yourself of the changes you want to have or have happen. So for example, if you're shy and insecure and want to become more assertive, you might repeat statements like, I'm a strong, confident communicator. I communicate my needs and wants. On the surface, it doesn't seem like these statements would have that much of an effect, but it's huge. High performers in just about every discipline use this technique to become high performers in their discipline. Self-talk works on two main levels. One is that it changes your thoughts. This is important because our thoughts guide our decisions and actions. In fact, our thoughts are a huge driver to our decisions and actions. And I'll give a quick example. Let's say I was in the market for a new job and I saw an opportunity to apply to. And if the thoughts running in my head were, I don't know, this seems like it's a lot of work. I don't think I can handle this, or I don't think I'll get this job. Guess what? I've just self-talked myself out of applying. If on the other hand, the thoughts running in my head were, this seems interesting. I think I can handle this. I don't know if I'll get the job, but I won't know unless I try. With those thoughts running in your head, you're much more likely to apply for the job. So self-talk works because it changes your thoughts from the negative to something more constructive. And those constructive thoughts lead to constructive decisions and actions. A more important reason for self-talk is that it actually rewires your mind. If you form a set of self-talk statements, those statements go deep into your unconscious and rewire your mind to bring out what the statements describe. So if you affirm, I'm a strong, assertive person, you actually start to become strong and assertive. If you affirm, I have an excellent memory, your memory actually starts to grow. Now it's hard to imagine that mere words can have such a huge impact. But words are huge. They have a bigger influence on us than you can imagine. In fact, majority of your blocks and issues, they actually came from words. The words that were spoken by your parents and teachers and bullies and peers and bosses that said that you weren't enough, that you weren't smart, that you weren't cool. It was these words that created the mental wall of your habits, your identities, and your authority issues. Now, if words can have such a huge impact in creating these mental walls, it reasons that they can also help you get over them. And what I recommend people do is create a set of self-talk statements with 8 or 12 statements that describe the change that you want in a specific area, like the specific goal you want to accomplish in the new year, and affirm each statement 10 times daily. So I have, can I use this? Yeah. Because because self-talk is so important, on the back of your handout, I have listed a very structurized way to do this. So I said to have 8 to 12 statements. So the first 3 statements would just be, I enjoy setting goals. Goals are fun and easy to achieve. I am committed to accomplishing my goal of, and then whatever your goals are for the new year. And then for the next 3 or 4 statements, include what will help you stay active and committed, as well as address the obstacles. So the example, a running example I have is for diet and exercise, because that's one of the main goals that people have. So I am eating healthy every day, I'm exercising regularly, I have full control over what I eat. And then finally add 3 or 4 statements that represent the end result of the goal. So if you can create 8 to 12 statements like this that describe your goal, and you affirm it 10 times, each statement, every day, day in and day out, it'll make a profound shift. In fact, I'm gonna make a bold claim. I'm gonna say that if there's only one thing you focus on this year in doing, and if it's just making sure that you affirm the statements every day, that will have a bigger impact than anything else that you do. And I've also given you different examples of self-talk for other areas you might want to improve, like productivity, memory, and self-control. So you can kind of see how self-talk statements are constructed and how they're worded. So that's my pitch on self-talk, and that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to focus on the long term. If you're gonna set a goal that you think you'll work on for the long term. You know, when you compare humans to animals, we have a lot of similarities. In fact, there's entire fields of psychology dedicated to studying animal behavior to understand human behavior. Though there are key distinctions, and one of the key distinctions is that most animal species, they come pre-programmed with a certain level of skills and abilities. They are born to do it. Because they're born to do it, they don't lose it. It's wired into their DNA. We humans have to learn everything. Everything. Even how to walk and talk. This has several advantages. For starters, it helps us learn more skills and adapt to more environments. But it has its disadvantages as well. The disadvantage is that if we don't stick with the skill, we lose it. There's a concept in personal development called use it or lose it. If you don't use something, you lose it, sometimes at an exponential rate. To illustrate, there was a famous Australian football player, one of the best in the history of the game. And in an interview, he was asked, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? He replied, why is it that it takes weeks, months, and years to develop the body for peak performance, but all of it could be lost in mere days? I don't know if he ever came to the answer, but the mind and body are complex systems, and like all systems, they're constrained by energy and resources. It takes tremendous amounts of calories to maintain a fit body. And if those muscles aren't going to be used, it doesn't serve the body to keep them, so they fade. The same thing applies to skills. It takes tremendous amounts of mental resources to hold on to skills. And if they're not going to be used, then the mind will replace it with something else. Do you guys know the challenge, one of the biggest challenges that astronauts face in space? Anyone? Muscle loss. Because there is no gravity, very little muscle contraction is needed to support and move the body. So the muscles just fade. Think about that. Without gravity, for the muscles to resist against, they fade. NASA reports that an astronaut can lose up to 20% of muscle mass in as little as 5 to 11 days out in space. The point that I'm trying to make is either you're growing or you're regressing. There's no in between. There's no, I'll work hard for 3 months and get this skill and then keep it forever. There's no, I'll diet and exercise for 6 months and be thin for the rest of my life. That's not how the mind and body work. In fact, the more quickly that you achieve a goal or a skill, the more quickly you'll lose it. This is why we all fall into pattern of yo-yo dieting. We work hard to diet and lose weight, and then assume that we'll just stay there. But then, and so we stop, and then we regress. And then we work hard to get back to that level and assume we'll stay there, and so we stop, and then we regress. So if goals are difficult to achieve, and we can lose them if we don't stick with it, then it reasons that you want to pick goals for the new year that you plan to stick with for the long term. Because the more quickly you achieve something, the more quickly you're going to lose it. With that said, don't set a goal to diet if you don't plan to stick with it for the rest of your life. I know this is a very harsh advice, and you probably never heard this from anywhere else, but this is a fact of the matter. Otherwise, you'll get to that point, and once you stop, you'll regress. Why put in all that effort to get to a specific outcome when you're just going to lose it? There's a pattern with most New Year's goals and resolutions, is set a goal, don't achieve it, and feel bad. That's kind of the main pattern that goes on. But there's another pattern that people don't realize, is set a goal, achieve it, lose it, and feel bad. You know, after we achieve something, and after we achieve something that we can't maintain, we start to feel bad. We feel responsible for losing what we had worked so hard to gain, when in reality it wasn't our fault at all. It's just the way the mind and body are built. So that's point number 2, or tip number 2. If you're gonna set a goal, set something that you're gonna stick with for the long term. So tip number 3, and which is the last tip for this presentation, is be consistent. Next to self-talk, the most important advice I can give people is to be consistent. That means showing up on a regular basis, day in and day out, week after week, month after month. Not starting strong for a few weeks and then stopping, and then picking up for another few weeks and stopping, and then hitting it really hard for a few months and stopping. Life is not about how hard you work, but how consistent you are in your efforts. If you show up with mediocre effort, regularly, you'll make far more progress than if you bring your A game intermittently. Have you guys heard about the concept of the mastery curve? No? There's a misconception that mastery is linear, that your skills grow proportional to the effort you put in. With mastery, you're actually on plateaus for long periods of time. You're putting in effort, you're grinding it out, and you don't think that you're making any progress. Then all of a sudden, you hit the next level. And then you're on plateaus again. You're putting in effort, you're grinding it out, and you don't think you're making any progress, and then you hit the next level. When you're not consistent, you move forward, you move back and forth on the same plateau. You put an effort to move forward, then when you stop, you regress. Then you put an effort to move forward, when you stop, you regress. You take 5 steps forward and 4 steps back. You never build enough momentum to get to the next plateau. So if there is something that you want to achieve, or a goal that you want to set for the new year, make sure you're consistent. Show up regularly, whether that's every day, every other day, or every week. Now, I will say, this advice of being consistent on the surface seems so simple. Of course, you know, like, I'm gonna go out and just be consistent and show up every day. But consistency is very hard to do. It's extremely, extremely challenging. And there's 2 main reasons why consistency is so difficult. One is that we live in a world, we live in a culture, and we live in a time where we have so many options. And our options have options. If I want to go exercise, I have running, swimming, weightlifting, yoga. And then within those, there's even more options. For example, yoga, you have options of Ashtanga, Vinyasa, Bikram, Baptiste, Yin. And then within those, there are variations. And it's easy to get lost in all the variations and not stick with any one thing to get enough results. Or you might set a goal to become a or to improve your photography, and then watch a movie on surfing, and your mind will get fixated on wanting to learn how to surf. Your thoughts will be consumed on it, distracting you from the goal of photography. Another reason that consistency is difficult relates to what I was talking about with the mastery curve, where you're on plateaus. When you're on a plateau for a long time, you start questioning whether all this effort is worth it, whether you're moving anywhere or going anywhere, and so you'll decide to give up or to change gears. Irregardless of what makes remaining consistent challenging is, irregardless of that, if there's something you want to achieve, be consistent. Only pick a goal if you can be consistent with it. If you can't be consistent, then find another goal or tone down your ambition with that goal. I do want to say that, I'm an author, so I don't have a 9-to-5 job, and I can make my own time and whatnot. And even though I have freedom in my schedule, you can only really focus on 4 or 5 things. You can only be consistent with 4 or 5 things at a time. So a lot of people, when they do their New Year's goals and resolutions, they pick a lot of things. But if growth is dependent on consistency, and we can only be consistent with 4 or 5 things at a time, then more than likely, those people with the many things aren't going to achieve it. So really, focus, really think about what it is that you want for the new year, and decide if you can be consistent with it. If you can't, then try your hand on something where you can be more consistent. So that covers point number 3 of the last section of what to do to be able to move past. I covered self-talk, focus on long-term, and most importantly, be consistent. So that concludes the presentation, and if anyone has questions, I am more than happy to answer. So just throw them out there. Go for it.
Okay. Since we are created, or would be able to work better in a narrow or 3 to 4 objectives or goals, one of the things that I have done that helps me, and I think it's important, that it's just as important as eating or taking a shower or driving or meeting people for appointments. I must set that up in my calendar as a consistent 3 days a week. I should show up to my gym.
Yeah.
And do you believe, my question is, do you believe that's something that could help us? Because we're giving it the same importance as everything else
Yeah.
to that particular goal.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think the question you're asking is to set on your calendar when you're gonna do this thing,
Yes.
as if it's food and water. Yes, I agree, because when you start to do that, you start to realize how limited time you have and how difficult consistency can be. Because if you start planning a week or 2 or 3 ahead of how am I gonna fit this specific goal, then you start to realize, I have a lot of stuff that comes up in my schedule that can prevent me from making this something that would be consistent. So I think that's a very, very good way to ensure consistency.
The other thing that I have done, and that's why I'm here, because
Yeah.
I just want affirmation. I already do a lot of these things, but my goal started before the year ended.
Yeah.
So actually you talked about the research and analyzing what gym and buying the clothing. I did all that, but I had a goal, I need to start my habit prior to the year ending. And so I actually started like 2 weeks before, consistently going to the gym, and I see it within 2 weeks, the immediate progress. And I clients, I need
Yeah.
to make sure that, because I actually realized that my health was deteriorating.
Yeah.
I was feeling things that were not normal to me. So I was like, I have to take action in order to prevent this. So always, we as humans, we tend to correct things. We want to fix things with the medicine or prescription.
Yeah.
But we have the ability to help ourselves prior to
Yeah.
accumulating and ending up in unhealthy conditions.
Yeah.
So it's just awareness of who you are, how your body functions.
Exactly.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I want to riff on an important point you made is whatever goal you want to set, start before start before you plan on setting it. So like New Year's goals, unfortunately it's already January 2nd, but if I had held this workshop, normally I would hold it in December, mid-December, because that's when you want to start building that momentum, because you're going to be doing all that preparation work, and then once the new year starts, then you can go full force and not be wasting time on preparation, and then feel like you've wasted a few weeks not getting anything done. Yeah. Anybody else? Go for it.
So you were saying that you only listed 3 things here of why the mind blocks you. Are there some others that you could just kind of give us?
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Beliefs, addictions, and when I say addictions, I don't mean to substances, but humans are habitual, addictive beings. Like when you talk about habits are more or less an addiction, and I can go really detail into that. Fears as well. So there's a lot of things. It would be hard to kind of go into it because the identity took a really long time to describe. I'll talk about beliefs. So beliefs are things that you hold or accept to be true. So inside our mind, we held all sorts of beliefs about all sorts of things. You might have a belief that hamburgers taste good, that dogs are cool, cats are weird, and driving above the speed limit is fun. But inside your mind, you also have beliefs about yourself, about who you are, what you can or cannot do, and your place in the world. Those beliefs define what you're capable of doing. So if you have a belief that I'm bad at math, if somebody asks you to solve a math problem, more than likely you'll say no. If you have a belief that I'm good at soccer, if somebody asks you to play soccer, more than likely you'll say yes. So do you see how our beliefs influence our decisions and actions as well? So your beliefs about yourself and your place in the world and where you are in the social hierarchy will also have a big influence on your decisions and actions and your ability to be able to achieve goals.
So how do you conquer that? If say it is beliefs, do you still kind of go through the 3 that you were saying, how the mind blocks you, and then even just applying some of the past things like self-talk and focusing on the long term? Does that still apply for beliefs? Because sometimes those beliefs are not just built on something that you believe, that something that somebody else has kind of poured into you.
Yeah.
That you start to have ownership of. Would you agree?
Yes, very much so. So the reason I offered self-talk as the number 1 tip, and the reason I said it's the most important advice I can give you, is because there's all sorts of reasons why the mind holds us back. And sometimes we can't really figure it out because it's complex. We have beliefs, we have authority issues, we have different fears that are going on and all of that. And we can spend a lifetime trying to figure all that out. And I believe some people who go to see therapists is what they do. They go try to figure out their issues when they might not even really hit it. They could spend years with therapy. And what I usually say is, it's not so much important what's holding you back, but how it manifests. So it's looking for the signs of how you're being held back, like getting too busy or forgetting and all of that. The reason I gave self-talk is because self-talk is one of the few techniques that, irrelevant of all that stuff, can help you move forward. It can actually go in and rewire your beliefs. It can actually go in and rewire your identity. It can take away a lot of the authority issues and all of that. But the key is consistency, like affirming the statements on a regular basis. Yeah. I didn't really mention this, but I want to talk about how important self-talk is. So prior to having written 10 books, producing an online course, I was a very successful accountant. I was a CPA. And prior to that, I had graduated from one of the top accounting schools with a degree in finance and accounting. And I have traveled to nearly 100 countries around the world. And in my travel journey, I've done a lot of stuff where I've had to push through my boundaries. I learned how to scuba dive even though I can't swim and all of that. All of that. All of that.
Self-talk.
Self-talk. I mean, when I was in under 60 feet of water and I'm panicking, it's self-talk that helped me remain calm. You know, when I've had overcome a lot of challenges as well, a lot of mental and emotional blocks. In fact, if you knew me maybe 5-6 years ago, there's no way you would have wanted to come to this presentation because I was so drastically different. Very erratic, out of control, just didn't have, I had a lot of challenges, let's just say. And it was the self-talk that had helped me through all of that. I was always affirming. And to this day, I have a set of self-talk that I repeat every morning. And my self-talk has changed as I've changed. It's evolved as I've evolved. And it's changed with the new goals and things that I want in my life. Yeah. So, yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So when you say to have 8 to 12, repeat it 10 times a day, is that 10 times in a row first thing in the morning or at different times during the day?
I say do it, at least do a set once a day. So what I do it is in the morning, like as soon as I get up, I start affirming my statements. Because right when we get out of morning, it's a time of the day where we're not really doing anything. We're just laying in bed, trying to get ourselves to get fully conscious. And so it's a moment of the day where we're not doing anything anyways. So I just start affirming my statements. And it's actually a good moment because that's when the unconscious is the least resistive to the statements. So you could say, hey, I am this and that, and you can feel the resistance come up. But when you do it in the morning, there's less of that resistance. What that means is the messages seep into the unconscious more easily and readily. So if you list 8 to 10 statements, you would repeat each statement 10 times, and then go to the next statement 10 times, go to the next. And over time, in the beginning it might take you a while, but once you get into the rhythm of it, it can take you about 15 minutes of self-talk. I self-talk all the time. When I'm walking down the street, when I'm on the bus, I'm just self-talking. Like, one of my most effective self-talk is I'm a do-it-now person. I do things now. I accomplish things right away. When I am not engaged in an activity, that's my go-to statement. So yeah.
Can you do it in your head? You say you do it throughout the day, like?
Yeah, in my
just
head.
out loud? Oh, in your head, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
all the time.
That's self-talk.
Yeah. I have another one. In the beginning, I had a lot of challenges committing to my self-talk. So my first statement, so I said it had to have 8 to 12. My first statement is I repeat self-talk statements every day. So this programs me to repeat self-talk statements every day. And then I'm always encouraged to just do it. It's just natural. It's not like forcing me on myself to do it. Yeah. But I say do it at least once. It's gonna be helpful if you could do it twice, like in the morning and the evening, or even 3 times, like morning, evening, and maybe sometimes throughout the day. The more times you do it, the more helpful it's gonna be. But as simple as self-talk is, just repeating a bunch of words, it's not easy to do. We find all sorts of things to distract us, and once we start affirming the statements, our mind starts wandering. And then 10 minutes later, we realize we were initially self-talking and we just got lost. So I say at least once because that's a good place to start with. Yeah. But the more you do it, the more it'll help. Yeah.
I've actually heard that if you write it down on the mirror or on your car, just even if it's a small statement of self-talking, it triggers because you're actually distracted. You're there's certain points of the day that
Yeah.
before you go to bed or in the
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
It might help for some people.
Yeah, there's levels to it. You can affirm statements and not believe it, but as long as you're affirming, it helps. But if you affirm the statements with belief, like yes, it's true, that's the next level. If you affirm the statements with emotions, like you're actually like saying it in a positive manner and you do believe it, that's another level. Something like writing is another level as well to it, which can be helpful. But if you just have it written somewhere and you just kind of see it here and there, it's still gonna help, but it won't be as helpful as if you're actually actively doing it on a regular basis, like actively doing it. So it's not so much about seeing it here and there, although that'll help. It's much more about repeating it, yeah, with the action. It's all about the action, yeah. Because here's the thing, you know, growing up in a system with schools where we're like taught to sit in front of a speaker, a teacher, and here we've become conditioned to two things: receiving information passively, and two, being in our heads. Because we've been taught to study, so that means being in our head. But it's all about action. It's all about taking things and being proactive and active with it. So we can intellectualize things, but unless we're taking action, we're not going to make improvement. And that applies to self-talk. It's about the actual action of it. Not just writing the statements down and putting them away somewhere, but actually, you know, doing it over and over and over. Hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Can you give us the name of the motivational speaker that actually told you that only 2% abide by his advice?
I don't like him, so I don't want to support him. But his name is Brendan Burchard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you attended
I attended his 4-day event. Yeah.
Why don't you like him?
I have my reasons. A lot of his stuff is, it's, you know, this is on videocast and it's gonna get back to him, and I know my career is shot. It's because he's such a big guy.
I didn't know this was videocast.
Huh?
I didn't know this was videocast.
Yeah, but you guys won't be on it. It's just me, I think. Yeah, it's on YouTube.
So you love him?
Yeah, so I love him. I have my reasons. Nothing bad, it's just the content. I think the presentation and the delivery is not how I would do it, so yeah.
You gave an example about a Mac and
PC.
a PC.
Did you guys all resonate with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that I did about 5 or 6 years ago is actually I was very comfortable with an iPhone and I transitioned into a Samsung, and it was the hardest thing. But now I realize I'm too comfortable with Samsung, so I always shock myself. So now I have 2 phones. So now I'm thinking of just having one of each, because there's certain things I can't do with the iPhone, but it's just so similar. It relates so much to just being too comfortable with one setting,
Yeah.
a Mac or a regular PC, and it's just, do you relate those two? Have you heard of these 2 examples, the iPhone and the Samsung and the?
Yeah, but I don't think that was the direction I was going in. I was going more in the direction of like, do you guys remember like 10 to 12 years ago, Apple's commercials where they would have a young hip guy who was like, hey, I'm a Mac, and then an old archaic guy who said I'm a PC? Well, that was one of the most effective marketing, because that marketing did exactly what I said. It created a desirable person and said, if you want to be like that, buy this product. And then it's created an undesirable person and said, if you don't want to be like that, buy this product. So the Mac, the young hip guy was a free-thinking, free-thinking, younger, hipper, whatever. And if you wanted to not be associated with a suit that is a conformist, then your mind couldn't help you but buy that Mac. Does that make sense? Like, it wouldn't even allow you to buy that PC. And you can see that in the behaviors of Mac owners. I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but they're very passionate about being a Mac. And although the identity that they created for Mac really, if you look at it logically, doesn't really fit with a lot of what Apple does in terms of avoiding taxes and all of that stuff. People have just, that identity, they're almost blinded by it. You know, it doesn't matter how much Apple charges, how much they've done a lot of not so nice things, but the identity is so strong that people continue to throw their money at Apple and Mac products.
So it's a marketing strategy.
It's a marketing strategy, it's a personal development strategy as well, so yeah. It's huge, it's a huge concept in marketing. I mean, start noticing how commercials and advertisements are creating identities and almost pinning you to it. And then you're buying without any effort. Like, they're getting you to buy without your conscious decision and control even. Yeah. Anybody else have questions? You look like you want to ask a question.
I find myself caught up well, I'm new in the city. I've been working in real estate for quite a while in LA, California, and here in Texas, but in Houston. So coming and starting my business here has been a little bit challenging because even though I know inside me that I have knowledge, I have experience, real estate market is so local that that I feel that I'm starting all over again. So I cut myself into a lot of preparation, and but I don't. In the back of my mind, is the fear of failure that keeps keeping me preparing and not
Taking action.
Taking action. So I really feel like I'm in that cycle, over and over and again. And
so you see your pattern. You see.
Yeah, I see it, and it's just hard. I mean, sometimes when I need to call a prospect or a referral or something, I just the feel that he's probably going to ask me about an area that I'm not very familiar with.
Yeah.
And I've been through this, but it's just I guess it's the age also that it's not once you get older and older, you have more fears.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of opened my eyes. So at the end is about taking action. I mean, all this is great. Being consistent is one of my biggest challenges right now, and I guess for a lot of people is how do you get in that habit of being consistent with easy steps? Like, do you start little by little, or do you start putting in a schedule everything from waking up to going to bed? Because I did it last year, and I put 100 alarms per day, try to do time blocking and everything, but at the end, if I didn't have the habit for, it's very hard to change it in one day.
Yeah, right? I want to say something that's really important. Do you see what I was saying earlier? Like, you can have all the systems and tools and whatever, and he did the time blocking and all of that, but his unconscious was still preventing him from moving forward. So a good advice I would give you is, you said a lot of limiting things about yourself, or the things that are stopping you. Like, I'm new to Austin, I don't understand this area, I have fear of this, all of that. Take all those statements and turn them into positive self-talk. So reverse them into positive self-talk and repeat those, and you'll find that a lot of those blocks naturally go away. What's really interesting with doing things like self-talk and visualization is the changes happen very subtly and naturally. You'll all of a sudden start acting out the way the self-talk statements describe without that effort or force. It just happens very naturally. So that would be a really good way to do that, because I can give you other systems, but that's not what's going to work. What you need is to go in and rewire your mind a little bit, and that would be a good way to do that. The other technique that I also talk about, and I didn't in this, is visualization. Visualize yourself doing all these things that you're afraid of doing. So what helps me is every morning I think about what it is I want to accomplish for that day. What's on my to-do list. So after my self-talk and before getting out of my bed, I will close my eyes and visualize myself doing all those things. A lot of times I have resistance to even doing it because I can't see myself do it. But that's not the point. It's just to actually force yourself to see yourself doing it. And what I found is more often than not, I end up acting out and completing my to-do list. Whereas if I don't visualize, I'm in that mode, you know, like I've got stress, anxiety, like is this gonna work? I might fail, and blah, blah, blah. But once you've visualized it, you tend to move forward much more easily. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Can you connect the dots again? So with the self-talk and creating the statements of affirmation, are you affirming end goals that you want to see accomplished, or are you affirming habits that will get you to those goals?
Both. So were you here when I discussed that sheet that you're looking at?
Self-talk?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You were here?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so you're gonna repeat the first 3 statements. They're just a standard statements. And that's gonna get you in the habit of thinking about achieving goals. And then you're gonna create a few statements that are gonna help you to work on that goal or overcome certain blocks that might keep you from that goal. And then the last statement, you'll focus on the end result of the goal. Does that help?
Yeah, so like the number 2, the section 2, I'm
Yeah.
eating healthy every day, I'm exercising regularly, have full control over what I eat, and each day I'm getting closer.
So that's the actual habits you want to create. But then you also want to focus on the end result. You want to let your mind know what end result you're seeking. So you got all 3. Did you guys get that, or did I not explain that well about the self-talk? Oh, that part of it.
I wanted to talk, because he's in the same field that I'm in. One of the things that I feel is so important in real estate is everything is it's so easy to get discouraged.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I tell a lot of our new agents is like productivity. You gotta produce. Even if it's small production, it's production. When you start seeing money coming in, that's production. It's action.
Yeah.
And maybe the money's not the motivator, but action. And when you see something, and like I was saying in my first comments, is like I see with 3 weeks just being consistent on the gym, I already start seeing little inches of losing weight. So whatever it is, when you start seeing a little action of like results, that's the only motivation you can have, is when you start seeing that you're producing something, that something's coming out of it. Because I prepared a lot as well as you, but the point is, when you start seeing the money, the checks, the results.
Yeah, and for me, it's just like on the local market, because I do work in the Houston area. I do work a lot. I do work with investors there, and I write 30 contracts per month. I mean, I do have the experience in all the fields. It's just like, it's probably not knowing the area, and I know we have all these tools and all these resources too, and sometimes I get overwhelmed because you have 100 different programs and resources and tools and everything. And you don't need, I mean, at the end of the day, you only need 2 or 3. I mean, you don't, I mean, you being in real estate, everyone offers you a new software, a new program, a new app. I mean, and
you can get overloaded.
Yeah, you get overloaded with that. Now, another question that I had was regarding to the long term.
Really?
Regarding to the long term, is it good when you suggest to kind of have like blocks? Because I mean, when I put is for the goal setting just to put like in a short term, but looking in the long term, like the final objective?
No, I'm saying, what I'm saying is like, I'm gonna go back to the photography example. If your goal is to become a photographer or to learn photography, what's the point of learning photography if you're gonna forget it after you've learned it? So set a goal to stick with that photography for an extended period, for years or several years. Because it's easy to learn, to spend 3 months and go whole hog and learn everything about photography. But if you don't stick with it, if you aren't actually going on and taking pictures and applying what you're learning, you'll lose all of that information.
So something that makes you happy.
I guess, in a way,
Yes.
yeah.
I'd say take it a step further and just pick those things that truly you really want for yourself.
Yeah.
And do that feel worthy of doing that in your daily thing, do it as something as an addition. I had someone talk me into doing it 25, 30 years ago, and I wasn't doing real well in college, so I said, I want to graduate with honors from the nicest, closest university. And I want to marry a runway model. You know, I was just making up stuff that I thought was hilarious. Well, after 20 years, I found this little piece of paper in my drawer, and I opened it up, and I got every single one of those things that I wanted. Now, once I got there, I didn't necessarily want them anymore, and realized that things had changed. But it was one of those things that showed me, if I say that I want this, and I envision myself actually experiencing it and having it, that potentiality is there to have it happen. So why pick something that's just an interim to what you actually want?
Hey, so it looks like people are wrapping up, so I just want to say a few things. Did you guys like it? Was it informative? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. Two, I know you had asked about the other things that block us. Well, I said there's tons more, and it's not just that, all the ways our mind blocks us, but there's more ways that inaction manifests. And I actually have an online course where I talk about that. Remember I said double your productivity? If you guys want to grab that, it's mindlily.com/uplift. And usually I give a discount for people who attend my events. So it's 75% off if you want to grab that. mindlily.com/uplift. And it goes much deeper. So this was a 1-hour presentation. These are like over 30 videos with over 7-8 hours of content. And it goes really, really, really deep into a lot of these topics. So it discusses over 12 ways that the mind will block us, or 12 reasons the mind blocks us, over 15 ways that inaction manifests, and then things that you can do to make forward-moving, sustainable progress. So yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you guys, I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, this is my second event I'm holding, so I'm glad you guys are.
Do you do these often, or
What's that?
do you do events like this often?
I'm just starting to get into it. And also,
And you're local?
yeah.
Yeah.
Local. Yeah, right now I'm local.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if you guys do have any other questions,
Are there emails on here?
on the handouts, my email's on there, so please feel free to email me. You're welcome. Thanks. How did you like it? Yeah? Okay. Did you have any questions? It felt like you were very engaged, so I could tell that you were taking the information.